Hey, my friends, let's talk about Kenneth Smith's death penalty case. So in 1988, so we got President Ronald Reagan in office. In that year, our guy Kenneth Smith was hired by a husband to kill that guy's wife. And Kenneth Smith said, okay, I'll do it for $1,000. What would that be? $1,000 in 1988 money. Let's just put that right here, what that would be in today's money. So he took the $1,000 and he indeed followed through and killed that guy's wife. And then he was arrested and, evidence pointed to him as the killer type of thing. And wouldn't you know it, in 1989, he was then sentenced in the state of Alabama to death. All right. And now it's 2023. Let's go over what the heck has happened. And it's very interesting, and it's involved, all sorts of different courts and different facts. And it's just so fascinating. I have been wanting to do this podcast for a long time, but all these Donald Trump keeps getting sued, or DeSantis files a lawsuit, Disney sues him. So we've been a little off track. So I finally get to do the podcast I've been wanting to do for such a long time. Now, he was sentenced to death, but the way it worked in Alabama is that, it went through all appeals. The death penalty cases are always appealed, and questions like, well, in his case, this evidence came in, that evidence didn't come in, these jurors should have been excluded, whatever. The judge was sleeping with the prosecutor, whatever. That didn't happen in this case, other cases, all right?
What is wrong with you?
So then, all of that happens, and it takes, let's say another like 15 years. And then ultimately, a jury decides, in death penalty cases, a jury decides if a person's guilty, and then they decide about the sentence. And it's the only time, because if you're like convicted of arson or DUI or whatever, it's the judge that assigns the sentence. And then sometimes there's sentencing guidelines and sometimes there's not, right? But for death penalty cases, the Supreme Court has ruled that a jury has to decide that. And with this guy, he had no real prior history, and, there's a lot of mitigating circumstances, he had a tough life, all that jazz. And the jury in Alabama, 11 of them said he should not get the death penalty, he should just get life in prison. And one of the jurors said he should get the death penalty. And then the judge, so it was the majority said he should not get the death penalty. In Alabama, until the law changed in 2017, the judge could override the jury decision. All right. So even though the majority said he should not get the death penalty, the judge in his case said, death penalty it is. Right. And so like I said, the law did change in the year 2017. So all of that happened. And that is just the beginning. All right. And now we go all the way up to 2017. That is when finally all the appeals ran and all the different evidentiary rulings and this, that, all that jazz happened. And we're going to talk about then what is going on, because he has still not been executed for this murder in 1988. The first order of business is he made a challenge, and it went to the high court. And that challenge was this. Because they changed the law in Alabama in 2017, where it required the full jury to say that there should be a death penalty, that is supposed to be applied retroactively. Because if this was going on today, he wouldn't get the death penalty. The Supreme Court rejected that and said, no, absolutely not. It is okay for that law to only apply proactively, and it's not unconstitutional that it does not apply retroactively. And that process took a long time to make that decision. So he tried that and it lost. All right. So then we come, and that took several years. As you know from other podcasts, it kind of climbs through the legal system and it gets appealed, this and that. So then finally, 2022, In 2022, the Alabama Supreme Court, all right, in June of 2022, they said, okay, you can have your day, your execution day. And that execution day shall be November 17, 2022. And that will be his execution day, the Alabama Supreme Court said. Kind of like the wedding day. Just kidding, guys, just kidding. This is a lot easier. All right. So we got the execution day, November 17, 2022. Make sure you wear something nice and all that jazz. And now comes the kind of gist of all of this freaking crazy mess that ends up happening. Right before his scheduled execution, there was two other executions that were planned in the previous 4 months before his, or previous 3 months before his. And those executions did not go well. All right. There was one in July, and that one, Joe James, was set to be executed in July 2022. The reason why I'm saying all of this is because the way the executions happened in those other cases were new grounds for him to challenge his execution day. That's one of the freaking crazy things about the death penalty cases, is that anytime something new happens, you can cling on that to file a whole new case. And guess what happens over the several years? New stuff happens, right? New laws get passed, new scientific evidence comes out, other people's situation comes up, maybe some witness comes out and says, oh, you know what, I lied, whatever. So all these things come out. Sometimes the victim's family say, we change our minds, we don't want that person to be executed. So all of those things allow the person to file a new lawsuit to challenge the death penalty sentence, okay? So what happened here in July 2022, this is a different case in Alabama. Mr. James was set to be executed. Now I'm going to talk about the procedure. And the only reason I'm talking about the death penalty procedure is because most of the death penalty cases, get this, several decades of lawsuits over how the state will execute the person. All right? That is what we debate about, is the method of execution. Because the United States Supreme Court has stated that the Eighth Amendment, the ban on cruel and unusual punishment, part of that is you cannot inflict, a lot of pain during the death penalty. Some pain, that's okay, but a lot of pain is not okay. So that debate then always continues about what's a lot of pain, what isn't. So what is cited in his case is this Joe James execution in Alabama, July 2022, by way of IV, okay, the lethal injection. Now I'm going to talk about a DIVA. You know what a DIVA stands for in the medical world? A difficult intravenous access, all right, DIVA, difficult intravenous access, meaning somebody that has a hard vein to get to. And if you have a hard vein to get to so that you could, pump the IV, get the needle in there, if you have that, then it's going to be hard to get what they call the lethal cocktail in you, right? If you don't have the right vein. And let me tell you the kind of what happens in terms of who has the good vein and who has the bad vein. What you need to get is a vein that's, well dilated and kind of good enough for the needle to get in there and then start pumping in the drugs that are going to go in the vein and then ultimately go to your heart, break your heart up and then your heart doesn't work anymore because that drug makes its way up to your heart and then kills you, right? So you have to get that vein, okay? Now, the prisoners have learned over the years, not just prisoners, but people have learned over the years kind of the factors involved in what's a good dilated vein as opposed to a constricted vein, okay? If you smoke, all right, smoking causes the veins to constrict. And that's why a lot of people, if they smoke all their lives, are going to have serious heart problems or, other liver, kidney, whatever, because it's one of the reasons is it's causing this this problem with the veins and the blood pressure. What do inmates do a lot, guys? They smoke a lot, right? So that is a big factor. Another factor, caffeine. If they're drinking a lot of caffeine, that will also constrict the veins. Cocaine will do it for you. Drug use will do it. As you get older, your veins kind of naturally constrict, which is crazy, right? Because he did this crime in 1988, and we are sitting here about 35 years later, and all of that time, the veins harden, they constrict, and all that. So it's going to be even harder as time goes on. I am saying all this because this is what the Supreme Court debates all the time, right? So there's a thing with the inmates, and they know, especially on death row, they know, okay, what can we do? Because if they can't get a vein in time, or if it takes too long, or if it's too painful, they may have to stop the execution. And to get a new execution date, it may take like 5 years, all right? And there's a theory that if you botch an execution, you kind of, in some circumstances, it's cruel and unusual to make the person go through a second execution. There have been some cases that have said that, all right? My favorite one is that stress. If you are under stress and you're feeling the pressure, what happens is the muscles kind of tighten, because you're like stressed and you're tense and whatnot. And as the muscles tighten, so that will also constrict the veins. That's why if you ever, you go give blood or you're getting a blood test or whatever, the phlebotomist, right? The people that are kind of, oh, by the way, flicking it kind of right there, that also helps get the vein sometimes to show. So they'll tell you to relax and chill out. It's okay, blah, blah, blah. Because if you're kind of tensing up, it'll, like I said, it'll kind of constrict the veins. Which is kind of crazy, right? Imagine in the execution room, right? They're trying to get the guy a vein, so they could kill him. And then one of the nurses there says, sir, can you chill out a little? Why don't you relax? Let's listen to some, Keith Jarrett or what do you like to listen to, Zeke, when you try to relax? Peter Gabriel? Do you like to listen to The Cure? What do you, what's that? Kenny G. All right, we'll pump some Kenny G in the execution room so we could get you to chill out a little so you could get a vein, right? That's a tough one to do. So, the inmates know all of that, right? Which is okay. I mean, hey, dude, it's science, right? So it's okay to know, it's okay, and believe it or not. So if those circumstances come up, if they drink water, that's good because water will help dilate the veins. So guess what the inmates do not like to do right before an execution is drink a lot of water, just for that reason, okay? So anyway, we go back to Mr. James in July 2022 in the execution room in Alabama. They were having serious problems getting to his vein, and they couldn't inject him with the drugs that could go in his vein and flow up to his heart and freaking bust that thing, right? They couldn't do it. What the heck did they have to do? By the way, the veins take blood from the heart to different parts of the organs, and then the arteries come back and take it back to the heart. Okay, so they want to ingest those drugs into that blood flow. Now, what we have to do here is this. Why the heck did it take 3 hours? It took them 3 hours to get a vein and inject him. And during that time, he was strapped at a gurney, like everywhere so they could try to do it. Now, one of the crazy things is it's not good if you're lying down, the gravity kind of will help get the vein, that's why like you put your arm down or whatever so that your arm is facing one, the gravity's working there. So then they kind of put they had to like move the gurney up so that it's kind of tilted, inclined. I love how the lawsuit, they called it in the crucifix position, because he's like strapped like this and he has to like come up, it's kind of when I read that in these different cases, I love when I read that. It's just, to me, it's kind of a funny term. Okay. So they had to do that to him and they still couldn't get a vein, right? And then what they did, and they didn't notify anyone that they were going to do this. It wasn't in their protocol what they were allowed to do, and it was only because the lawyers for the inmate ended up hiring a doctor that did an autopsy and kind of sorted this out. They did this procedure called it's a venous cut down. What that means is, just imagine like a little chainsaw, or not a chainsaw, a jigsaw. Is that what it's called? The jigsaw, right? You want to cut certain parts of the arm so that you could kind of like through that cut kind of get to a vein. Okay, it's not. I mean, if it's an emergency, ER room, you can't get a vein or this and that. Like you could maybe do that, but it's not like a good thing to do because it's painful, it hurts, it'll cause scarring or problems down the line. And sometimes as you're doing that, you could cut a vein, whatever. But they did that to him so that they could get a vein, and he was in a lot of pain and blah 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 blah. And then ultimately, it worked. Okay. Then in September, but it was very bad. It was very bad. It was bad for business. Dang it. How that worked. Then in September 2022, a similar situation happened. There was an execution date in Alabama for Alan Miller. And this one went very bad. In fact, it was so bad that they had to stop it. This is September 2022. What happened was he was scheduled to be executed at 8 o'clock, but there were some issues with the court, all right? And they were worried that they would be stayed and whatnot. And so they had to wait till 10 o'clock. Now, it's very funny, the execution writ states that it has to start at a certain time and end at a certain time. So it states September 22 from 8 p.m. to midnight. So you have to kill them during that window. And I've always you do a kind of comedy here, it's like coming down to the wire, like you got like 50 seconds left, and it's like, hurry up, doc, and it's like he's still there, but he's almost there, and like there's like 10 seconds left till midnight, and then there's like some of the nurses are like 10, 9, 8, until they could get the vein in there. This is how crazy it is. Now, I'm not trying to be funny. This is actually accurate because that is how these death penalty cases go. They have a short window to get all of this right. And it's tough because they don't do this very often. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's why a lot of these get messed up, right? So with this guy, it got messed up. They did it wrong. And they were, kind of similar to Mr. James. They couldn't get a vein for him. And they tried from 10 p.m. until midnight. And as the clock was getting close to midnight, the executioner said, we're not going to be able to get this in time. All right. The executioner, I got his name. It's very funny. Terry Raybon. He is the official executioner. Anyone want to know what he makes per year? Yeah, 10 grand a month. All right. With overtime and benefits. And definitely a death penalty is an overtime deal. So they couldn't get to him. But in that 2 hours, he was, strapped in a gurney, and he had all sorts of, injuries because they jabbed him with needles like left and right and up and down. And they did everything they could to get a vein. Somehow they couldn't get it. Right. And when it was all said and done at midnight, when he was examined, he was like effed up. All right. Then, because of those two executions, we finally get back to our guy, Mr. Smith. He filed in August 2022. Remember, his execution day is November. He filed a new lawsuit saying, look, Alabama does not know what the heck they're doing with executions, and I am fearing that my execution will be just as torturous and painful as these other two fellas. And because of that, it would be cruel and unusual for the state of Alabama to execute me. All right. And get this, that made its way through the court system. All right. And then on November 17, 2022, we are now getting ready for the execution. All right. And the case went to the 11th Circuit, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and it was sitting there. And on the day of execution, Mateo, are you a procrastinator, yay or nay? Kind of. Okay. Apparently, the 11th Circuit Court is a procrastinator, or whoever the judge was assigned to it was a procrastinator. Get this, judge, did you really have to wait until the day of the execution to make a ruling, right? He did. Oh, but by the way, in that botched execution, and this was cited, did you guys know that after an execution, there's a press conference? Whether or not the execution was done right or done wrong, or if it was botched or if it was canceled, there's a press conference. And I keep imagining, sadly for myself, I am a Raiders fan. And as a Raiders fan, I see a lot of press conferences where after the Raiders lose, so I imagine this press conference after the botched execution, and the warden and executioner are sitting there, and one of the press members say, "Well, warden, what the heck happened?" And the warden says, "Well, we almost had him. We had the needle there, and we just couldn't get a vein, but God willing, we got another date coming up, and I think we'll be able to find it next time," right?
We couldn't do diddly poo. I'm totally embarrassed and totally ashamed.
If we execute from the very start of the game to the very end of the game, that did not happen.
It's all about execution. Oh my God. Z and Mateo, it's all about execution, and we weren't able to execute today. That was perfect, right? We were not able to execute today. By the way, speaking of the Raiders and speaking of the death penalty, oh, can we do a news flash? Okay. An inmate in the state of Arizona had his last words before death as, "Go Raiders." That is a true story. That is a true story. I'll get you the link. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, so the court was, on the day of this guy's execution, the court waited till the last day. His execution is planned for 8 p.m. Okay. And then get this. He's talking to his wife on the phone. He got married while he was in prison. He had a lot of time, 35 years. He got married. Anyway, he's talking to his wife on the phone, and at 7:57 p.m., all right, execution is planned for 8 p.m., they tell him, "Get off the phone, Kenny." Okay, that's what the guards call him, Kenny. So, "Get off the phone, Kenny," at 7:57. So he hangs up the phone at 7:57. Now, the reason why it's important is because they have to keep a phone open in case the governor calls, because the governor can do a stay of execution. Johnny Cash has an awesome song about a guy that's about to be executed, and he's got like 22 minutes to go, and then 21 minutes to go, 20 minutes to go, and in one of the minutes, it's like they called the governor to see if he'll give us a pardon, and he said no. So anyway, at 7:57 p.m., they tell him to get off the phone. You're going to be executed. So he hangs up, and then at 7:59 p.m., I kid you not, the 11th Court Circuit of Appeals sends them an email saying, "We are ordering that the execution is stayed." Okay. Wow. Did you say you're a procrastinator? The freaking execution was planned for 8 p.m. and they sent an email at 7:59 p.m. from the court. I bet you anything, some clerk, they had the email ready like at noon, and then just for the hell of it, they set it to send at 7:59 p.m. just to be a jerk, right? So that's how they get it. So the prison gets the email, and they don't even check their email. What happens is the lawyers for the condemned check their emails, and they call the prison to tell them that, hey, the 11th Circuit just stayed this execution. Now, the state of Alabama still proceeded to execute. Why? Just in case the United States Supreme Court overruled that 11th Circuit stay of execution. So from 8 p.m. on, they still did the procedures to execute him. They still put him in the gurney. They still strapped him in. They still did all of that great stuff. Okay. And they, and then they were trying to get a vein. Guess what? No vein, right? because all his veins were constricted, okay? Apparently this was very stressful for the guy, right? So it's stressing out his veins and they couldn't get it. Maybe he's been smoking a lot. Maybe he's been drinking. Oh, alcohol also does this to the veins. Maybe he's been doing cocaine. Who knows? But for all these different reasons, they can't get a vein there, and maybe he wasn't drinking enough water that day. They're prodding and they're just like, they're getting him in his collarbone and his elbows and his shoulder, everything they're trying to do to get a vein, right? And the problem though is even if they get the vein, then they have to wait for the lethal injection because the court said you cannot execute this guy. And then imagine this, at 10:20 p.m., the United States Supreme Court in this guy's case intervenes. And what they do, this is the United States Supreme Court at 10:20 p.m., they issue this, it's like a one paragraph opinion that vacates the 11th Court Circuit stay. So what that means is this: the 11th Circuit Court ruled that they want to stay the execution because of Alabama's having all these problems, and they freaking waited till 7:59 p.m. right? And then the Supreme Court. By the way, I take it back. When I said the clerk, sends it at 7:59 p.m., that could have been intentional. And the reason is because if they did it so late, it wouldn't have been enough time for the United States Supreme Court to overrule their ruling. So it could have been actually intentional, not just some jerk doing it. Anyway, at 10:20 p.m., this is pretty short. It's very unusual that the United States Supreme Court gives an opinion about a case in 2 hours and 20 minutes from the appellate court. That's what they did. And at 10:20 p.m. on the night of November 17, 2022, here is the order of the United States Supreme Court. The application to vacate the stay of execution of sentence of death presented to Justice Thomas and by him referred to the court is granted. November 17, 2022, order of the United States Court of Appeals for 11th Circuit is vacated. There was Justice Sotomayor, Kagan, and Justice Jackson dissented, saying that they think that the stay of execution should proceed. But the six justices, written by Justice Clarence Thomas, said, no, this is kind of weird. Let's vacate the 11th Court's opinion that stayed the execution. So go ahead and execute them. You got an hour and a half, okay? Because they do this at 10:20 p.m., right? So that makes its way back down to Alabama saying, okay, you got an hour and a half because this all expires at midnight, damn it. So then they get word, the guy's still on the gurney and they're still trying to stab him and get a right vein, okay? Let's do it. We can do it. This guy is a diva, right? Difficult intravenous access, okay? And then sure enough, they couldn't get it. They tried for another hour. They tried for a longer time, and they just couldn't. They had so many medical professionals and guards and everything, and they could not get the right IV into Kenneth Smith. So by around 11:30, the warden and executioner say, we ain't gonna make it in time, guys. Sorry. Hey, Mateo, what did they say at the press conference?
I'm in favor of execution. Maybe our entire team needs to be executed after tonight.
Failed to execute the game plan, right? We failed to execute the game plan, damn it. And we couldn't get a vein, and we just we tried and blah blah blah. We couldn't do it. Okay. So he then. But get this, when they finally did that, they were so upset. By around 11:30 p.m., they took the gurney and they flipped it upside down. So they left him hanging upside down by the time they were done. They're like, well, we couldn't get it when he was lying flat. We couldn't get it when he was lying inclined. So let's get him upside down and then try it. And then when it all was said and done, they just left him that way for a while. Isn't that a little bit inconvenient, So that's how bad the whole thing went, right? Now, I don't know. In my humble opinion, this whole thing is freaking crazy. Okay, in the name of humanity, this is literally what our country has done. Is they said, well, we can't just shoot a person because that would be inhumane. The act of shooting and killing somebody that way is inhumane, even though it's painless and fast and blah blah blah. It's inhumane. So what's more humane is doing this lethal injection or gas chamber. Well, wow. Okay. The gas chamber. This guy, after this happened in November 2022, listen to this. He made a new lawsuit and he won that said, okay, fine. Well, first thing, I shouldn't be executed because it would be cruel and unusual for me to have to go through another execution. The court said no. Give the state a second shot at him, right? Literally. And then he said, well, if I have to be executed, I want to be executed by the gas chamber and nitrogen gas instead of lethal injection. And the United States Supreme Court said, fine, we agree. You shouldn't have to do a lethal injection because Alabama doesn't know what the fudge they're doing. So fine, you could be executed by nitrogen gas. Now, I know what his lawyers are doing. They've never executed someone with nitrogen gas. And so there's no protocol set up. There's no mechanism to do it, all right? Now, the history of gas chambers and executions is something that I wish I had time to do. You may remember in Arizona, when Arizona started the death penalty procedures back up, they took a little hiatus after some similar incidences. And then what they did is they said, okay, we'll do the gas chamber and we'll get this gas. It's called Zyklon gas. And what we do is we put someone in this gas chamber. The gas chamber is like this airtight room where everything is closed and blah, 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 and you can't get out. And then what we do is we just kind of drop the gas in there, right? And then the gas explodes and freaking the person can't breathe and blah, blah, blah. You know why that got a lot of pushback? Is because that was what the Nazis did at Auschwitz. This is true life. This is a real story. So all these people protested saying, wait a minute, you're going to get a gas chamber and then you're going to use the exact same gas the Nazis used and kill people the exact same way the Nazis did, right? And the state of Arizona said, well, they did it and it worked. And so we're going to try it. So that got such a bad reaction that the state of Arizona said, okay, let's do something else. At the same, let's try the lethal injections again. Pfizer, they previously they were buying these lethal drugs from Pfizer, the same company that brings you the COVID vaccine. Okay, also has the death drugs. Okay, that is pretty crazy to me. That's like opening up a cafe. I've always wanted to open up a cafe and call it the Agent Orange Cafe. Right? So listen, the same company that brings you the COVID vaccine also had the death drugs. What they came out and said is we are no longer going to sell the death drug to states. They were making a lot of money doing it, but they wanted it to stop because it got so much bad publicity and everything. So and part of it was they bought a company that had that drug and blah blah blah. So Pfizer said we are getting out of the death penalty cases. And into the COVID vaccine cases, right? And so then these states have had to figure out how they're going to do this. All right, so let me explain this nitrogen gas. Some scientists, came up with this other idea. All right, what we'll do is we'll put the inmate in a gas chamber and make sure it's airtight so no air can freaking get out of it. Now, nitrogen gas is unique in the sense that the nitrogen gas, we'll put it under the guy's seat and then, have a mechanism, like put it in salt water or something where it could gas up. Okay. And then as it does that, see, when nitrogen is mixed with oxygen, it doesn't, I said something wrong. It doesn't mix. That's the point. So some gases, if they're kind of in the air, they'll mix with oxygen. Nitrogen is an inert gas, which means that it'll, when it comes, it hits oxygen, it'll just push the oxygen out. It doesn't mix together. So if the person is breathing nitrogen, what will happen is then as they're breathing nitrogen, the oxygen in their body will keep going out. And as the gas chamber is getting filled with nitrogen, then there's not going to be any more oxygen that the guy could breathe. Because as he's kind of like doing that, and then when he breathes out, some of it is oxygen, right? And then the oxygen, he's not going to get back in because there's so much nitrogen and it keeps coming in, right? So after about 30, 40 minutes, he will run out of oxygen and just die, okay? Which is the humane way to do it, not to shoot him. That is what the Supreme Court has ruled, not Joe Samo, right? And that's what we're going to do. Now, the United States Supreme Court said that this is the way we agree with Kenneth Smith that this is the way he should be executed because that's what he wants and that's more humane than the lethal injection. Now, as I said earlier, why did his lawyers do this? By the way, his lawyers being paid by the state of Alabama, as are the prosecutors, as are the judges, and all of these folks have made millions of dollars in the administration of this, okay? And the Supreme Court, the 11th Circuit Court, all that jazz. I mean, he's got like very good law firms paid by the state fighting for him, and sometimes it's the state, sometimes there's these like nonprofits that raise a lot of money and they also pay the law firms. Like I said before, the reason, this is all tactical. The reason why he wants to die by nitrogen gas is because his lawyers know that the protocols to do that, because it hasn't been done, and it's not like you could do human testing on this or animal testing, right? So it's hard to do testing, and there is no protocol on exactly how to do this. Like what size the gas chamber is, how airtight is it, what are the material, what is in there, what is the chair that he has to go, how do you drop the nitrogen gas in there, how do you get it to interact where it gets gassy, all that jazz. None of that has been done, right? How long do you think they'll take to do that? Like 3 years, 4 years, Yes. Then when it's done, you're going to have these lawyers hire doctors. Okay. By the way, they're all getting paid by the state. The lawyers are going to hire doctors saying, wow, if that's how it's going to be done, it's going to hurt. It's going to take 30 minutes. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. And then after 3 years of protocols, there's going to be 8 years of arguing. And then after that, then maybe some court will say, okay, use the nitrogen. But the beauty is by then, there'll be some other mechanism, right? And then his lawyers will say, wait a minute, instead of using nitrogen gas, let's use this other thing because it's a lot more humane. And then what do you know? All these lawyers will say, okay, bring it on. Let's check it out. Let's take another few years. That is how these cases go. And that is why, if you ever read about death penalty and you hear someone getting executed, it's for a crime they did in the 80s or the 90s. And in some cases, the 70s. Why? Because this is how it goes. And it's beautiful because it takes decades and decades. And if I had the time, we could do one of these on every single execution. All right, folks. God bless. I'll see you next week.